Hi, guys. Welcome to the new season of Island Buddha podcast. Today we have the lovely Serena Rogers with us. She has 20 years of leadership hospitality experience and an empath herself. And she's going to share with us how transformative it has been in her life. She is a speaker and facilitator herself. She shares this with everyone, but especially for women. So, we are going to dive into that today and all the underlying themes within that.
Hi.
Okay, so let's first start off with how I initially viewed empathy and then how I perceived it from you and how the two actually go hand in hand. Well, initially, when we first spoke about it, I was thinking about it to myself, and I realized I was thinking about it in a very action oriented way. But I think that's because I'm a very solution oriented person. I'm always, okay, we can't keep talking about something in circles. What's the solution? And I think that kind of, what's the word, bypass that initial thought that you speak about. I guess the why and the thought behind it before actually putting any action behind it, which should just make sense because that's how you would do anything else. But I don't know why with empathy, it seems like I'm doing it the reverse way. So, can you talk to me more about that, about how you approach it?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am so proud of what you're building and the message that you're sharing. And I think all activity and all effort to improve the way that we think and live and lead ourselves and each other as co-humans sharing this planet is only for good. So I'm so proud of what you're building.
Yeah.
So empathy, it's a bit of a buzzword now, and my hope is to take it away from this buzzy word, okay? And I don't think there's anything wrong with this desire to jump to action, especially in the modern world where we're conditioned to base our value and our worth on production, right? Like, what do I produce and how fast do I do it and how well do I do it? Really, to step back and think and reflect is not necessarily an easy process for most modern adults, right? But to your point, empathy is not an action, really, it's a reflection, it's a feeling, it's an understanding. I mean, the definition of empathy is like to put yourself in somebody else's shoes,
Mhm.
right? Can you feel with somebody else? And there's a lot of neuroscience behind that as well, with mirror neurons and the way that we pick up on other people's experiences through a combination of body language and facial gestures and tone and movement. But really, I understand why it's kind of hard to move away from let's act, right? What's the next action to take? And move into a more kind of reflective space of feeling and understanding, really, which is what empathy is. It's a space, it's a point to reflect inward and outward and find that connection with another, essentially.
Yeah. How I think about it sometimes is okay, now that I place myself in this person's shoes, how do I move or react based off of that feeling or that information? You know,
Mm.
how am I now going to move or speak to that person? I guess looking at it more under a considerate lens. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily you have to do something with it, but I guess like maybe that's like a personal thing. I feel like okay, because I've placed myself in this person's shoes and I see why da 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 da. Now I need to be considerate in X, Y, and Z kind of way, which I
Yes.
would expect somebody else to do for me as well too. So I think that's why I do it.
Yeah. And I think your point on being considerate and having consideration for another is essential, right? But that's not necessarily what we're talking about with empathy. So, and I feel that right now there are some voices in the last few weeks that I've kind of read or heard that are kind of demonizing empathy exactly for that. They're saying if you're too empathic, if you're too empathetic, you're going to make bad decisions. You're just going to melt into the other and do what the other side or person wants. you're not going to be clear-minded, you're not going to be efficient, when actually that's, in my humble opinion, the wrong perspective. Empathy is a tool. It's not because you understand somebody else that you need to abandon yourself,
Right.
right? And that's, if I can share one message that I've learned, because for decades I didn't do that. And I employed empathy blind, right? Unbounded in business, in leadership, in director roles and project manager roles, and then in my own life, without the filter of, but what do I want? Where do I stand in this moment? So to your point, and I love that you raised the point of like reacting and being reactive, because there's a difference between reacting and responding, right? There's a very clear difference between reacting to somebody or something and responding to it. And that's the key to empathy as a powerful tool. If you're just going to feel with somebody and then place no filter and no limit before you put yourself back out there, then you're just reacting. You're just being reactive. This person feels X. In this meeting, I'm sensing that they want this from me, so let me just give them this. No, there's space to pause. And I think it's essential that we employ empathy through this lens. I can feel with you. I can pick up on the signals. I can possibly understand what you want before you even communicate it. But I can also pause and decide on how I want to react and respond in a way that honors my position, that doesn't let go of my position, if you would.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like so key to a note I had made, and it said, empathy informs my choices, it does not replace them. I think a
Mm,
lot of people struggle not with empathy itself, but with what they think empathy requires of them, especially when it comes to staying aligned with themselves, which I think is like literally what you're saying right
mhm.
now.
Yes, I agree 100%. Especially as women, and as you mature in life as a woman and you have a family or you increase your responsibility in professional settings, we have this tendency as empathic beings, as sensitive beings, to, you know, absorb people's emotions, absorb people's energy, and anticipate people's needs and sense things, sense misalignment even before conflict arises. We have that capacity. But I think what we've been doing for too long is leaning in with the answer to that, right? Example, as an intuitive being, you sense misalignment, you see a conflict kind of bubbling up. Instead of saying, let me just sit back and observe this exchange and decide where I land on this position, we have that tendency to be, okay, let me hop in. How can I get in here and calm it down? How can I dissolve the conflict to avoid the issue? And that's your point. That's your point, is you don't have to throw yourself into the ocean. You can stay in the boat. You can ride the waves and then intentionally decide if and when you dive into that water. Fully equipped, right? With your suit, safety checked, your mask is working. You're going to dive into that ocean, but you're going to do it intentionally and you're going to do it with vision. You're not just throwing yourself into the ocean before it's time. If that helps as an analogy, I don't know if
Yeah.
it.
No, it kind of does. And it's interesting when you put it that way because I think maybe at some points I use empathy more than others, and I think I haven't, or I've been mixing up my words. Or maybe it's more so empathy. I think empathy for self looks different to how I express empathy for others. So I think
Mm,
that part of where I said consideration, I think that's how I show empathy for others. But empathy for myself, I realize that if something is like wrong, or if I want to discuss something, or if I'm feeling off about something, I'm silent. Like I will take my time and I will come back when I've gathered my thoughts, especially as layered beings, women. I like to not analyze, but adjust and see, okay, is this something that is triggering me? Is it a me thing, or is it the other person, or is it neither of us? Is it just something that I don't like? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I do. I do that before I, what do you say, jump in or jump out the boat? Which one is it?
Either. Yes. Jump into the water or jump out of the boat. You choose.
Yeah, before I jump out of the boat. And I just thought it was because I'm a super reflective person, but I guess I use that version that you're talking about, sitting down and thinking about things um, towards myself,
Mm-hmm.
other than when I'm like using empathy for others. I don't know why, if there's a difference or why I express it in different ways.
Yeah. I think it's very insightful because I have recently been focusing much more on the empathy for self piece because, if empathy doesn't include you, I don't think it's empathy. And I don't think that you can constantly be scanning outward and not check inward,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
this is where the discussion shifted for me recently because I came to this realization that for so many years I was outwardly focused, right? I became incredibly skillful at understanding the other, knowing the other, even often without direct interaction. I can read the needs, the wants, the desires, the position. And then I somehow can morph my being to align with that person. And I
mhm.
think it's a beautiful skill. It is a beautiful skill to be able to so deeply know and understand another, the others. But what was happening in my case, at least, was what about me? Like, what about the self in there, in my own position? And Obama so famously said we're in an empathy deficit, right? Like,
Mhm.
we need to focus on putting ourselves in the shoes of others, understanding their experience. I agree. But too many people don't know how to live their own experience. Too many people can't put themselves in their own shoes and do what you elaborated on, which is reflect inward and decide and understand and decipher what you're really feeling. So many people can't do that. How can we ask women, leaders of communities, of families, of organizations, of companies, of teams to, put themselves in other people's shoes and feel with them if we're challenged to even feel with ourselves? If you
Yeah.
spend so much time in someone else's energy and space and using yourself to help that position, what's happening with self? Like what's happening with you and all of your parts? Like, and so you can't. How can you be truly outwardly empathic if you don't hone the capacity to listen inward, to know your own self and your own experience?
That's so true. That's so true because if you can't do it for yourself, how are you expected to do it for someone else? And then it also goes down the rabbit hole of, well, I've been told, I don't know if you've been told that I'm like too deep. And I think that's fine because you know what? I think everybody that I love, everyone in my life is going to benefit from that deepness. Some people would take that as,
As like an insult?
yeah, like as like an insult, but I take it as a compliment because for me, I feel like I'm walking around and people just think that, I don't know, I'm like this like little fairy walking through life. But I think it's because I'm just always thinking about like what I want my life to look like and how it's going to be. And one of those things that I want in my life are children. So I'm not constantly thinking about them, but they are thoughts in my head of when I do things, when I think about things, when I work on myself, when I'm working towards a goal, etc., etc. And I say all that to say, I feel like empathy is something that like children benefit from, especially as mothers. Imagine being a mother and not to like, ridicule somebody if they feel like they're not that empathetic and all these other things, but there's always things that like we can work on and be better at. But I think that's such a fundamental thing of simply putting yourself in your own child's shoes. Like that shouldn't seem so like deep.
Not at
How
all.
else are you gonna guide them? How else are you gonna like, does it, I feel like this like it sounds like if I'm talking taboo or something strange and it shouldn't seem that way.
No, I don't think it's taboo and strange at all. I think your depth is beautiful. And I think we should all, in a world that is increasingly being dominated by algorithms and sound bites and sameness, right? We should be seeking depth. We should be seeking depth because the human experience is magnificently deep and multi-layered and complex. Like this human system, this body, Liz Gilbert calls it like the meat puppet, the body that this supercomputer, our brain inhabits. And then you have a soul in there and you have consciousness in there. There's a lot happening in the human experience. So I would argue that depth is essential for moving forward with intention. And to your point on parenting, I couldn't agree more. So it becomes very hard to parent differently from the way you were parented unless you listen inward. And unless you do the work and take the time to understand what was your childhood like? What was that experience like for you? Put yourself into your own shoes and think back to what really served you from your parents and what very possibly and unfortunately too often harmed you, right? So the discussion on parenting and empathy in parenting is so powerful. My daughter is 6.5, and her arrival completely changed my entire life. It exploded my life, if I put it honestly, but it needed to happen, right? And it forced me to reflect and to look inward tremendously, and then also learn a lot about the child experience. Like, what is it to be a baby, an infant, into toddler? What are they going through? And that's the empathy piece that you're talking about, right? Like, what is happening neurologically, psychologically, physiologically in this little creature, this little human creature? And I need to understand that and be sensitive to it so that I can parent for a strong adult. Because people are adults much longer than they're kids. And we make the mistake of treating them a certain way when they're children and then being surprised at the outcome when they're adults.
Yeah.
It's
It's a
no,
short ride. Like
it's
you're
a
not a
short
kid for that long.
ride.
It's a
It's
short
a
ride.
short ride, but it's the most important ride of the human journey. Because those first 7 years are the formative years of your human existence. And then what happens to you from there, most of us don't realize what we're carrying from childhood because our parents, unfortunately, were not able to put themselves in our shoes and understand what we were going through. So you carry that with you well into your 20s. And then quite often it hits you at some point in your 20s or 30s like, I might have to unpack some of this, right? And figure out what has happened to me and then undoing it, right? So if we can give children those first 7 years of unconditional love and understanding and communication and care and empathy, then it's a launching pad for like a beautiful life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's like what a beautiful gift is it to give your child the life of not having to heal from a bunch of things.
Thank you.
Because they start off like at the finish line. They're not at the start with everybody else. They're already at
Yes.
the finish line. They're like, bye
Yes.
guys.
Bye. I'm good. I feel good. I feel confident. I feel clear. I know myself. I'm ready for the world. What do I want? How am I going to go out into the world and support others and create positive humanity? They're ready for it. They're
They're
ready for it
ready
because
for
you've
it.
given it to them. But to your point, Amy, to your point on empathy, let's just give like an example of a lens, okay? So if you've heard, because everybody has heard the terrible twos and the effing fours, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody's heard
Yeah.
that. And I, as a new parent, also bought into that, right? Like, oh, they act horrible at 2 and they act horrible at 4, and it's even worse now because they have words. Like, no, like what they're doing is completely developmentally appropriate and necessary. So Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this at length. Like,
I love him.
I love Dr. Mate. Who doesn't love Gabor Mate? Like, he's just giving you all the jewels. What's happening to a child, and I had to learn how to manage this when they're having a massive meltdown. That's not a moment for you to come in with hard discipline and forceful behavior and judgmental behavior, right? What
Right.
they're doing is they're expressing the plethora of emotions that a human being is gifted with, right? Like all the emotions, right? The curiosity, the confusion, the rage, the anger, the happiness, the joy, the fatigue, all of it. But we in society kind of raise kids to think there are like 3 or 4 acceptable emotions, right? Like you can be happy, you can be a little bit sad, you can be quiet, you can be excited, and you can be curious. Everything else is off limits, and you're going to get in trouble if you do it. Where when you understand what's really happening, that explosion, your role as a parent is simply to sit and observe and make sure the child doesn't hurt themselves or anybody else, obviously. And I heard in an interview with Dr. Mate, somebody said to him, well, how do Dr. Mate, how do you expect for me as a parent to let my child have these massive tantrums and teach them about self-regulation if I don't, kind of put them in check? And he said, well, you model self-regulation. You model it. So while they're screaming and kicking and losing it, instead of you doing the same, which is screaming and kicking and losing it because they're losing it, just sit and just be. It's hard. It's very hard. But that's the answer. Sit and be and show them that I'm just going to be here with you. That's unconditional love for children. That's what shows them unconditional love. Not the judgment, not the fear, just the being.
That's so interesting. One of my first podcasts I did with another mom, and she's a therapist, and we were just talking about like motherhood, and she was talking about like the judgment you get sometimes, like if you're out and you see a child screaming, the first thing that people do is they'll give the mother dirty looks, and they're just, well, she can't raise her child. All you know, the snary looks and all these things just come at it, and we're just like, you literally have no idea what that woman is going through or how hard it is to like raise a child. And it just makes me think about if people just like understood things more, there just wouldn't be so much judgment. If you just like educated yourself on certain topics, and then when you try to speak about something or share knowledge, then it kind of comes across as if like you're pandering. But I don't think no one human being can know everything there is to know about like one topic. So I think if everyone was just open to hearing things that they are not informed about, I think things would just be like way more smoother. But then again, I'm just a deep person, as I've been told, and I'm just super curious. So I don't know, maybe that's not the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I think the best position to take is that you don't actually know, right? Like the best place to be is, I don't know.
Hmm.
That's the smartest thing you can ever say is, I don't know, because really there's so much that we are not even close to knowing. And to that mother and all the mothers that feel pressure from society and judgment from society, I would first say, it doesn't matter. That would be my first response is, it doesn't matter. What matters is you and your child and that bond that means more than anything you can imagine, right? But let's look at the judgment side more deeply, because that's where the empathy for self and the listening in is really lacking. And I've experienced this in my own family, right? I don't parent in a way that my mother parented me. And she doesn't understand the way that I parent. She doesn't agree with it. She doesn't get it. And I actually don't care because I know the harm that was caused by a different parenting style. But interestingly, the people that have the most visceral reactions, the people that are going to judge the most, the people that are going to criticize the most, are often the most deeply wounded. And it's because they've never gone inward. They've never gone inward to decipher their own experience and their own feeling. So when they see behavior in children, it's triggering them, right? It's triggering the way that they were contained and manipulated and forced as children. And they internalize that. And though it causes tremendous pain, they've never looked at it. And this is the thing with the depth that you're talking about. It's not an easy journey. When you look inward, you have to be ready to see some things that you might not like, right? Looking inward is difficult, it's painful, it's explosive, it's implosive, it's dynamic, it brings up memories that you probably don't want to see. You know, I have this exact experience with my mother. She'll never look at herself. She'll never go back to her experience and think about what really was wrong with what happened to her. Nor will she look at our experience and say, maybe I should have done some things differently. So the judgment doesn't matter because what's at cost? Societal acceptance, you know? The
Over
ch-
your own bond with your child that you're creating. And something that I realized, and I mean, I guess we could talk about this a bit too, because you've lived in the Caribbean for so many years, and well, you see how like, children are like treated there. Yes, like in some instances more often than not, like, we're seen as like, these cute little babies, toddlers, whatever the case may be, but there's also this very children should be seen, not heard kind of vibe and all these things. Your child isn't your best friend. And I guess it's in other like, strict cultures too. I could see it aligned in like my friends who are of Indian descent, etc., etc. But I think that's not how I would parent. And not because necessarily anything was so bad about it, but because I've seen what it's to, yes, have your child as your best friend and you could still parent.
Mhm,
And the bond is just so close that all of this like foolery of, I would call it backwardness
mhm.
of, trying to intimidate your child or make them feel some sort of, I guess, power play between you and I just feel like that's like not that healthy. And I think if you raise your child in a certain way, they're going to respect you because you respect them. I think a lot of people who, as you said, don't go inwards or just, I don't know, look into things, they have this default thought that, oh, my child is going to disrespect me. I can't speak to them like a normal human being. Like, what do you even say?
Yeah, no, it's
That's not a case. Like, this is a whole human being just like you who
yes,
deserves respect too and who will know how to give it as well
yes, if you show them,
if you show them.
if you show them. And I did live in the Caribbean and I loved my experience in your beautiful country of Trinidad, and I still have friends. So it's not a cultural commentary because I think it exists across geographic
Yeah.
landscapes, cultural
I
landscapes. Um, I think it's more of a mindset
mhm.
that is slowly working its way out. And this mindset came with European colonization, right?
Mm.
Indigenous cultures across geographic landscapes don't parent like that. People that come from the earth, as we all do, but that are close to it, do not parent like that, right? Sleep training is not a thing for indigenous cultures, right? You walk around with your child on you 24/7, you sleep with your child. So we have to understand that modern Western tough parenting thing, in my humble opinion, was driven by European colonization, I think. But fast forwarding, The concept of discipline is ridiculous. You want people, whether adults or children, you want people's behavior to reflect core values, right? Strong pillars of humanity. You don't want parrots. You don't want robots, even though we're getting closer to Gen AI like by the minute. But you want humans that can interact with themselves and other humans using the human tools we've been giving of compassion, empathy, of kindness, of reflection, of oneness. We're all one. So the discipline is really about segregation and separation, right? Right? So we don't need to discipline children. We need to correct them. But you
Yeah.
can do that with love, right? And if a child is doing something harmful to yourself or to themselves or to others, you physically pick your child up and move them away. I'm not saying that
Right.
you
You
let
just
your
like let
child
them
just,
like,
no, but there's a way to do it without shaming your child, right? Especially when you understand that what they're doing, they're new to the world. They've never been in the world, right? They don't understand society. They don't understand these human bodies. Like, I'm a 42-year-old woman. I still can't figure all of this system out. How can a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old? So what they're doing when they act out is not with malicious intent, aiming to harm. No, they're just figuring out this body, this bag of meat, this system, this mind. They don't know. And they're pushing every boundary because that's their job. Their job is to push every limit and see what happens. Like, what happens if I throw this thing off the table? Oh,
they're learning.
as they're learning the world by interacting with it. They're learning human relationships through those interactions. And if you teach a child through harsh discipline that if you don't do exactly what I want the way I want it, you're going to lose my affection. I'm going to scream at you. I'm going to abuse you. Now, whether that's physical or not, it's abusive, right? And you teach your child to repress themselves in favor of gaining your approval. And human creatures, animals, children need adult connection for survival, so they're always going to prioritize it. So they will push themselves away. They will forget themselves to give you, the adult, what you want, right? And so it's just this feedback loop of we don't need discipline, we just need correction and we need to model. If you want a respectful child, well, respect your child.
Yeah. I think that's such a key part. And I don't think a lot of, I guess I could say, well, a good portion of people haven't been parented that way.
That's right.
And I feel like I always say this, I think I've said it in like almost every podcast that I've done. I feel very blessed that like I was raised in Trinidad and that I grew up in my mom and my stepdad's home because especially being around my stepdad who has read so many different books. Like I was literally telling my best friend the other day because she's like Hindu and we talk about different things and she shares her culture with me and I share Caribbean culture with her. And she always loves hearing about him too because literally Uncle Anthony has read every religious book under the sun, if I'm not mistaken, in the English translation. So his mind is just so open and so curious, and I feel like I just soaked that in like a sponge
Beautiful.
without him having to shove anything down my throat. It was literally like I was just seeing him, and I just absorbed all of that. And I think that literally just goes into what you're saying of I don't know. Everybody's child is different, and somebody's gonna watch this and be like, "Well, my child." Da, 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 da. Okay, your child. Everybody's child is different, but I believe because I was raised that way and I've seen it work that you can just
Yes.
like show the child how to be a good
Yes.
human, and
Yes.
they will naturally follow that.
Absolutely right.
Whatever they see, they will follow.
Yep. Absolutely right. And the key, I think, if your lens is empathy and parenting, the key is if a child is having this incredibly explosive emotional display, they're actually feeling that. And I hear parents say, oh, they're just little manipulators, they're just lying, they're just, well, yeah, no. They might also just be feeling those massively big emotions. And we make the mistake of applying our adult logical brains to their behavior, which doesn't work.
Yeah.
Their brains are actually not yet developed enough to have the filters and the perspectives that we have. I heard somebody say that this child is just a narcissist, self-obsessed. Yes, they should be. Until around 7 or 8, they don't even get to this point where they recognize beyond self.
That is so true. I was literally walking around the mall the other day. I think I was like with my boyfriend or one of my friends, and we were just talking about how toddlers have no self-awareness. They think they live in a world by themselves. If they were to like bump in a person, it's like you bumped into me, and it's not even in a bad way. They're just I don't know. They're just going through the world,
Yeah, but that's exactly
existing
what
in
it
their
is.
own little bubble.
That's exactly what it is. So that's where the empathy piece comes in. It's don't assign judgment, right? Don't decide that this is selfish behavior. Just be with them. If in and understand that a child's emotions flow like by the second. They're coming, they're peaking and dropping and changing, and that's that's normal, right? That's normal. So if a child goes through this like 7 to 12 minute arc, I'm just putting that number out there, it doesn't mean anything, but like of like screaming and crying on the floor and then sitting down and being quiet and then going back to crying and then laughing, they're not psychotic. This is completely normal. And what you have to do as a parent with the empathy piece is like, wow, right now, she or he, they are feeling emotions that big. Those are real. Even if they just last for a few minutes and then they're gone like they never happened, they were very, very real. And it's our job as parents to empathy inward, listening to self, to go, whew, this is a lot and it's triggering me and I might lose my patience. So how can I restabilize, calm myself down because it's very triggering, and then go be there for my child. I'm not saying you have to fawn over your child. Oh, sweetie, no, but let them experience it and be there with them. And that, I said it earlier and I'm going to say it again, that is unconditional love for a child. If you want your child to grow up to be a human who believes that they deserve greatness in the world and they want to not have all the self-doubt and the self-criticism that we all struggle with, sit there with them. Don't pull your love back. Don't tell them, oh, you're behaving so badly, I'm going to lock you in your room until you calm down. These are not animals. These are humans. And the child, if you were truly being empathic, is not trying to harm you. Just listen in. They're confused. They're scared. A lot of the time, they're just overflowing with energy from their day, from school. It's a lot to be a kid. So try the soft touch that says, it looks like you've got some really big emotions right now. And when you do that, you'll notice their whole tone just drops and shifts because they feel heard by you. They feel seen by you, and then they can calm down. It's all about nervous system regulation, right? And I don't know if you want to go there, but I'd love to go there. Let's talk nervous system regulation, right? And this is a moment in time. This is a generation in time that is struggling with such anxiety, unprecedented anxiety. I see it in other nieces that I spend time, like the anxiety that exists in today's culture is powerful. And it's because we're not listening inward, right? The overwhelming anxiety, the panic attacks that you hear people just talk about like it's coming and going like it's nothing. These are powerful expressions from your system going, I need you to listen to me. Right? When you get to panic attack level, it's because your entire system and all your parts are like, girl, you are not listening to me. And I need you to listen to me. And this is the empathy for self piece. You have to listen inward. And I've come to this understanding recently that burnout, and we can put the word out there, burnout or breakdown, it's not a boundary issue. It's not a capacity issue. A lot of the time we think, I couldn't handle all the work. It's too much. It was too much for me. And so I burned out. It's a listening issue. Burnout rarely starts with exhaustion, right? Burnout doesn't happen like this. I'm exhausted and I'm falling apart and I'm burning out. It's a buildup. It's a buildup over time of not listening inward. It's micro yeses that should have been nos. It's all the emotional absorption that high capacity women do. It's the unspoken expectations that we place on ourselves and we place on others, and then they're not met, so we're disappointed. It's the silent over responsibility, silently overburdening yourself to solve everyone's problems and be there for everybody else. Right? So I want to reframe this. If you find yourself over absorbing, if you find yourself constantly scanning outwards, if you find yourself constantly wanting to regulate everybody else and keep things stable and putting yourself in this role that you think is empathy led, but it moves you into martyrdom. If you think that you need to sit there and absorb everybody's toxicity because that's what you're here to do, and you need to stabilize everybody, that's the burnout path.
Yeah. It's like, so I have this note here, it says, it's not about excusing behavior, it's about understanding why something feels off before reacting. There's power in pausing and naming discomfort instead of bulldozing past it.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Say that again, please.
Empathy isn't indulgence.
Mhm.
It's not about excusing behavior, it's about understanding why something feels off before reacting. There's power in pausing and naming discomfort instead of bulldozing past it.
Absolutely right. That's the power that we all need to hone in on. I'm tired of seeing strong, high functioning, high capacity women burn out. It happened to me twice, 3 times actually. It's currently happening to women that I love and respect. And it happens more than we talk about in the business world, in the corporate world. You know, what we want to do is give leaders the tool of empathy. It's a tool to listen inward and align. What you want to get to when you talk about this power in pause and preach, like the pause is the answer. It is the answer.
Yeah, because you discern what's yours and what isn't in the pause. If you don't pause, then you're just going based off of how you feel. How you feel could be based off of how something with you, how you feel could be based off of the other person, how you feel could be based off of the work situation. So if you pause, maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to identify where it's coming from before you open your mouth.
That's right. And maybe, like you said, it's not yours. It's not yours to hold. And that is the powerful shift with empathy and leadership is what is yours to hold? What do you really need to own? And for somebody like me and clearly like you, who is highly empathic and very sensitive, it's very easy to pick up on the energy of others, especially as a woman, to pick up on the energy and the emotional states of others and absorb it. But that's the pause that you talked about, the power of the pause to say, I can understand that this is how you feel in this moment. But let me pause. Do I feel that way? Do I agree with that position? Actually, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't feel that way. And you know what? I'm going to let you hold that. But the empathy piece is leading me to understand your position. But then I get to choose what I want to do with that position, right? And so there's a key point that I think is so important when you're talking about the pause and really analyzing where you're at. I think what we need to shift, like the paradigm shift, is that we should not be seeking approval. We should be seeking clarity. Right. And I think we're forced, you talked about this earlier with like the judgment, the outward judgment, the societal expectations, right? We're pack animals. right? We place incredible weight and value on the opinions of others in our community. And the larger that the other is, the more powerful it becomes to us. So people around us think that, and then people around them think that, and then the larger community thinks that. And wait a minute, our whole culture thinks that? Oh, hold on. I better be thinking that because I
Yeah.
want to be safe, right? I want to be safe with my pack, the human pack. But that's not the way to clarity, and that's not the way to emotional peace. What we need to be seeking is clarity. Approval is unimportant. Approving of yourself comes with clarity. External approval is not worth chasing, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. 2 points. I'm going to knock on that because I think that is so important. I probably talked about this as well in all my other podcasts. I made a point about it is that nobody really cares about you to the point of not sleeping at night. They're like just so preoccupied as to like what Amy is doing in her life. Oh my gosh, like I think people really think that other people care about and look at their life in such a great analytical way that sometimes they're fearful of like living their own life or just doing something. I even am guilty of that sometimes. I'm afraid of being
Absolutely.
too cringe on social media or just doing something when in reality nobody really cares about your life that much. Yes, maybe your partner, your family, your close friends, but everybody else and even them too, they're living their own lives. Your family are living their own lives. Nobody's really looking at you like that.
Yes,
And with that being said, that means just go and live your life.
absolutely right. And what is your life? It's your position,
Hmm.
right? And I say this because I did a post a little while back about authenticity only works if nobody else is doing it. The minute,
So if you're doing something else that somebody else is doing, or thinking exactly the way somebody else is, or wanting to because you want to be in a pack,
thank
are
you.
you really authentic?
But that's the point. That's exactly the point. It's not like if you are, like maybe you have a position that I find interesting. So let me take the time to digest your opinion. Let me think about that and say to myself, what is it about Amy's position that I like? Okay, I like XYZ. You know what? I'm going to absorb XYZ into the way I think and do things. Great. But your filter, you're deciding. But the minute you're focused outward to say, I want to be like her, I want to look like her, I want to talk like her. Oh, look, she does. You're lost. You're gone. You're dead in the water. The authenticity has to be inward. It has to be understanding your position, and that only comes from listening in. What is your position? How do you feel about this thing? And this is the most powerful piece. This system that we're talking about, right? Like this body, this brain, this ego, this psyche, it will give you all the signs that you need. All the parts of you will try their hardest to tell you how they feel. But because we think it's inconvenient, or because we don't agree, or because we don't want those messy feelings, we do our best in modern society to numb that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting headaches all the time. Advil, Advil, painkillers. What? Pause. Like clearly your system is trying to tell you something. And that's the key to all of this. Every signal and sign that your system sends you, Amy's powerful pause that you brought up, you need to use that and listen. Okay, you're getting headaches. Oh, I'm getting all these headaches all the time. When are you getting headaches? What time of the day? What type of day? Are you in a certain environment when the headaches hit? Are you around certain people when headaches hit? Are you involved in talking about certain topics at work when those headaches hit? Pay attention. No? Do you know how many high impact and high performance women that I know, and I was in that position, that talk about, I'm not sleeping anymore, I've got constant headaches, oh, my hair is thinning. Excuse me, what? Like, it's not a badge of honor to say that you're so stressed and overwhelmed that your system is breaking down. What that means is your system's been trying to talk to you for a long time and you haven't listened. to the point that it's gonna blow you up, right? It's gonna be like panic attack zone. We're gonna just freeze you in your tracks until you take the time to listen to us.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also, I think, people out there who think that this is, I guess, as you said, inconvenient work. It's like woo-woo work. Is it really necessary? Like, this is how the world is. You just need to toughen up. Why are you spending time doing all of this? And I just had to thought about it while we were talking, and I was thinking, okay, yes, playing devil's advocate, if that was the mindset. You're still going to run yourself into the ground though, because health is really wealth though. So if your mental health is messed up, if your physical health is messed up, if your emotional health is messed up, it's all interconnected. So at the end of the day, you're probably going to be messed up. So I think it's probably worth like paying attention to your body and your feelings.
Yeah, you can't power through it. You can't power through it in a sustainable way, right? Like anybody with any experience under their belt can tell you
It
that
catches up to you.
you can't power through the pain, right? It will catch up to you. Let's use a simple analogy, right? Football players, right? When they're young and they get them on the field at 17, 18, 19, 20, when they have that youthful energy and that resilience and their bodies can take it. And through injury and injury and injury, what do? They pump them full of drugs and, just keep them going. Painkillers and drugs and cortisone and just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then they finish their career, it's over, and their body doesn't even function, right? Or they've had so many concussions that their mental capacity is diminishing and they're not functional. You can't power through it forever. That power and push through, and that's, by the way, it's very like Western dominant aggression mentality, you know? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Pause, but understand the fear. And if you decide to do it anyway, great, but honor the fear. Your body's trying to tell you something, your mind is trying to tell you something, and it's not the same for everybody. There's no medal for destroying yourself on the way to success. There's no medal to reaching the goal. VP, president, CEO, founder, and destroying yourself in the process. Right? I mean, I'm not there. I'm not a multi-billionaire who's built all these things, and to say it's not worth it. But if you talk to a lot of them, they'll tell you
They say the same thing.
they'll say the same thing. You can get all the things and the accolades and the success on paper and the money and still be so utterly lost and hurt internally to the point where people take their lives or people lose all that they built and they're, a hot mess.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I feel like sometimes people just unfortunately need to learn the hard way. I think it's very hard for people to receive information from somebody who they think isn't at that level yet, which is all well and fine. But for example, I knew this young person who was around my age too, and I was telling them that, I used to work at like this private practice in the city and it was really affluent, like celebrities, athletes would like, go to that practice, and these are really high net worth people, but they would come in with so many problems. And I was expressing to this person like they were on their way to being really successful, getting everything that they wanted at their career at a very young age. And I was like, like, this is all well and good. This is like so exciting. But if you don't try to continue this in a sustainable way, you're going to get there and it's going to feel very empty. And they're basically just like, well, you haven't gotten there, so da 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 da. Long and behold, they got there, which is such a great thing. How does it feel?
Yeah, nothing is worth your peace, right? Nothing is worth your peace, and nothing is more valuable than your peace. And it's interesting when you exercise listening inward, when you really, and I've only just recently started this, it's not something I was ever able to do in my younger life. And my career too took off very young. When I was in Trinidad, I was 24. I was a director at
Yeah,
24.
you were
Yeah,
the it girl.
I was a little bit on fire. I mean, my career just like catapulted itself, but I wasn't stable. Like I wasn't listening inward. I didn't know what I was doing and what I wanted to do and where I was going and what worked and what didn't. I just kept going and pushing and next level and what's next and how do we go and how do we do more? But you know what? It crashes. It always crashes. And if you can exercise that listening inward and make it a consistent part of your life, then what happens is your presence becomes calm, right? And your presence becomes powerful in that calm, right? The younger version of me, who had no idea about all that we're talking about now, was just like powerhouse, bulldoze everything, and just keep going forward. But it's not sustainable. It's really not sustainable. And that translates at every single level. Don't think that high capacity women in, like I said, the VPs and the presidents and the CEO seats don't go through it as well. Sometimes people at higher levels do better at containing it. They can show it less. They can put a better face forward. But it does not mean that they don't struggle with the same challenges, the same misalignment, the same doubt. So it's an exercise for all of us at every level. And to your friend who said, but you're not there, you can't tell me. Maybe pause, right? And listen to wisdom and listen to me so you can listen to you. And the misalignment starts there. The misalignment starts when we all blindly think this is what success looks like, right? Nowadays, you have to be an entrepreneur to be successful. You have to be a content creator who has millions of followers. That's what success means, right? Right. Wrong. And where, people talk about purpose. I don't think it has to be singular. I don't think you have to have one thing that you do and
Yeah.
that's your purpose in life. Not at all. It has to be much more authentic and flexible. But the point is what is your system telling you? Like, where do you derive your most joy? Yes, you have to be disciplined. Yes, you have to be consistent. But if you have to apply that discipline and that consistency to anything you do, why not apply it to something that really aligns? That is the truest expression of you. Maybe it's baking muffins. Like maybe your thing is muffins and you're just like obsessed with all the muffin recipes you can find and making them as delicious and as chewy and as fluffy as you can. Well, go there.
Yeah.
And then apply the discipline to that. And then apply the consistency to that. And then, yeah, stick with that. But at least you're starting at a base that says, I've listened to myself. This
Yeah.
is something that I want to pursue for now. Maybe it's going to
Or
change. Yeah.
or align that discipline to yourself. Maybe things aren't that deep. I mean, it always just boggles my mind how just considering yourself or reflecting on yourself is like this woo-woo thing. If you didn't have yourself, if you didn't have this human body, you wouldn't be here to go deep in all these other aspects of your life besides yourself. Like it blows my mind. You don't want to go deep about this thing that makes you be here and
Mm.
on this earth and do all these other things.
Hmm.
It always I can't fathom.
I agree with you. I feel the human system is the most magnificent, complex, mysterious creation that has ever existed on this planet that's been around for billions of years. That started with energy, right? That's how the earth started, with like explosions of energy. And through the millennia and time immemorial, there was an evolution to this human creature that has something that no other earthly creature has ever had, as far as we know, which is this, right? This is the most misunderstood territory. It's our own human experience. And that's the shift when you understand, like you just said, this this is what we should be exploring. And there's no way to do it for somebody else. That's why we go back to empathy that doesn't include for self is not true empathy, right? there are mirror neurons that help us decipher in others what something means, right? So my mirror neurons are looking at your face right now, and I'm reading your eyes and the way you blink and the whatever it is, the facial expression and the movement, and I'm internalizing that, and that becomes a feeling in my body. So I can read you and I can feel you, right? I mean, that's the science behind empathy. It goes way deeper than I'm able to
Yeah,
explain.
no, but still, that's like
Right?
that's the deep part that makes us see and analyze another human being's facial
Yeah.
features.
But
So
yeah,
that deepness, if we didn't have that, do you think you'd be able to see somebody else? Like,
absolutely not.
it's just so, and I, another thing that came to my mind is again, because I just think about things in a way where I'm already perceiving of how somebody else is going to receive the message in the video, is that I don't think my podcast or just these messages is to turn every human being's mindset into ours,
Right.
but
That's
to find our audience and community of people who think like we do,
that's right.
then projecting to be a different way and attracting an audience or community that is not aligned with us.
Or just sharing your beautiful message. Right? Sharing the message and hoping that it lands, right?
Yeah.
This moment that gives us the space to say that, empathy is a tool that can make you so powerful, that you can carry someone else's experience without collapsing under it, that you can listen to someone else without automatically kicking into over functioning. What do I have to do now?
I agree. I agree.
Yay! Love it. So good.
It was so good.
So proud.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
had another point too, but I feel like we touched on it already, and it was just basically saying that empathy becomes operational at the point where understanding informs how we proceed. Sometimes that means change is required, other times, understanding changes the meaning of a situation and allows for patience. The
Yes,
skill is knowing which is which.
absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree. I think also it's not always like something negative on the other person's part. Sometimes it could be like understanding and it could be like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from with that kind of perspective. Or, oh, I see why you do X, Y, and Z. And the understanding in itself rectifies the situation, then you having to do something or the other person having to do something. And so I think that's how empathy could be a beautiful part sometimes as well, too.
But that's it. You just honor and respect. There's polarization across the political spectrum, especially in your country that you're living in, where I was born and raised, and across the Western world. There's this constant polarization. That's a tool, by the way, just so you know. It's a tool. But, hold the space that you don't have to generate hate or anger.
Yeah.
You can just say, okay, I see your position. I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't align. I wouldn't think that way or behave that way, but I see it. That's all it is. And I can hold space for that being your position without.
It having to like, there have to be something like a solution or a fixing or a da, 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 da. But I think saying prevents some of that anxiety or whatever. Because it's like if you don't say stuff sometimes, as you said, it stirs up in your body and you just mm, ick.
Ick. And it's not always about, and I know what we're going to wrap up, but it's not always about saying for the other person, right? Like any good therapist will tell you, if like I want to talk to you about our relationship, I can't start off with, you're doing all these things and you do that and you do that. That's not the language. The language any competent therapist will tell you to use is, I feel. Last week this thing happened between us and I've thought about it and I really felt uncomfortable. I really felt misaligned. I really didn't agree with what happened. It's a me thing. And that's the listening inward, right? The angry society that wants to go to war and fight and conquer and dominate. Again, Western colonization. Actually, all of humanity. I shouldn't say that. We've been doing it since the beginning of our journey here on the planet. But That's the separation. That's the you voice. You're doing all these things. You're all of this, and I'm going to come fix you. No, me. What's my experience? I'm going to share my experience with you. You can choose to do what you want to do with that. You can choose. And to your point about consideration, that's where, okay, if it's somebody you really love and respect and admire and care about, then I say, Amy just told me that this situation makes her feel X. I care about Amy. I truly respect Amy. So, you know what? Next time I'm going to honor myself, but try to do less of this thing, right? That's the consideration and the
Especially
compromise.
if the person told you it was something harmful. And I think that's like why I focus on the um that second part of empathy is like the actual, now that I know, what am I going to do with this information?
Correct. Correct.
Especially if the person told you, hey, this makes me feel this type of way. Hey, this is harmful to me in some kind of way.
Yes.
Or I didn't like. Da, da, da. And of course, you as a human being have the option not to, you know,
Yes.
fix or address or. Auntie, also a question. Do you think that the lack of empathy we're experiencing in the world has a lot to do with the 50% divorce rate?
I am no expert in relationship psychology, but my guess would be yes.
I'm just thinking about empathy is also, as you said, a huge part of it is listening to yourself.
Yes.
I think you have to do a lot of listening to yourself before you decide to marry somebody. And I think we also spoke about societal expectations and fitting in with the herd and all these things. And so when I think about, you know, working backwards, as I
Mm.
do oftentimes, because I do want to get married. And
Yes.
so I think about that divorce rate. I think about the things that people don't want to think about. And I think about risk mitigating. So I am not in that 50% half. And I think how to avoid something is to see what actually causes it. So I look at like the cause and effect sometimes. And
Absolutely. Yes.
two of the huge things that I notice is okay, women and men
Yes.
rushing with just somebody. It could be the first person, it could be the second person, but they've seen so many red flags, but they just want to have that title that they're just going to go ahead and just do it,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
fine and well because you would have that title now and you would have checked off that box in society and that's all fine. And then the second part, going back to what we are talking about in our umbrella podcast of empathy, is not listening to yourself.
All of
There's
the
so much of
things.
not listening to yourself that I feel like leads to
All of the things.
divorce.
All of the things. All you said and more, right, is the answer. So I did that. I didn't get married, but I did exactly what you said, right? The red flags, the ignoring the red flags. And that comes down to the societal titles of success and what that looks like, and basing your journey on what that should be. There are some key things in hindsight because I feel like I'm kind of starting my life over. Like I'm redoing my adult life. This is Serena, the empath 2.0, like
No,
starting
but
now.
I love that. I love that.
And I'm blessed to be able to do that, right? But it came with a lot of work and some very, very, very hard decisions that had to happen. But the short answer to your question is yes. I don't know the actual statistics, but I read a lot on human psychology, on, knowing oneself. There's a handful of parenting books. There's one iconic relationship book called Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson, that essentially extends attachment theory for child psychology into adult relationships and tells the reader that, really what's happening in your relationship is the expression of your unmet attachment needs as a child. And this is what happens if, as you said, you don't get to know yourself before deciding on the couple, before having the kids. You've got to get to know yourself. The Serena, the empath 2.0 going into a relationship now is not the Serena 1.0 from 10
Listen,
years
who
ago.
you got?
Let me tell you,
It's
not the
not who
same
you're getting
person. No,
today.
not the same
I
person.
love
Yes.
it.
Yes. So the short answer is hold me tight, read the book, read everything Gabor Mate has put out, all of his books. There are a handful of parenting books out there that I really champion. And I'm happy to give you the titles if you want to put them into
Yes. I'll put it in our
the
caption too for
caption.
anybody else that wants them as well.
Yes, 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 yes. So That's the answer to your question.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could talk to you for hours
I
and
feel the same, and I'm so proud of what you're doing, girl. I really am.
thank you, thank you. It feels so good and nerve-wracking at the same time, but I feel like little Amy is proud of big Amy, and
Yes.
I feel not necessarily always have to be doing something, but I also feel like one day my kids are gonna look back at these videos and they're gonna be like, Mom really tried.
Yes.
Be her best for us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that like people sometimes, especially in this day and age, especially like in New York where everybody's just like always hustling and going in,
Yes.
it's very individualistic. And I personally feel my life isn't just for me. I think if I was just to be on earth and it was just about me and I was just here and Amy did this and Amy did that, I would not feel full. I would not feel like if I really did anything. And so that's why I think I need to not necessarily do things per se to make my family or my future kids proud, but I do have this bigger sense of community and interconnection than it just being me. Like I won
Yes.
this award last year and as you know, the name of my skincare company is Bather. And the reason why it's called Bather is because that's my family's name. And I felt like if the name of the brand was like Amy or something else, like super individualistic, it wouldn't have felt as great to get that if it was just
Mm.
about me or if it was
Beautifully
just
said.
my name on it.
Beautifully
And
said.
I think it took me a while to realize I am that kind of person, and it was very hard to realize that I was kind of that person because that's not how majority of people are, which
Yeah.
is fine.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it goes back to listening to yourself and figuring out who you are so you could live your life and be happy with that.
That's the best gift you can give yourself and anybody who's going to come after
Yeah.
you.
Well, that's all we have for you guys today.
Fabulous. And we'll talk again.
Yes, we shall.
All right.
All right.